Each morning, the sea shared its secrets with Nnenna, as it had for as long as she could remember. But this morning, the secrets carried a sharper edge, like whispers with fangs. Knee-deep in the crystal waters of Egu Bay, she stood still, her quiet so profound it seemed to consume every sound around her. Fish danced in harmony with her gestures, rising when her hand lifted, spinning when she turned. The local fishermen had long given up working nearby. They claimed her presence brought either unnatural bounty or empty nets. Today, they watched from afar, their eyes narrowed in suspicion. "The tide follows her again," murmured old Chima, gripping his weather-beaten spear tightly. And indeed, the sea did not behave as it should. It responded to her presence, moving with an unnatural pull, drawn as if by unseen threads. Her gaze, storm gray like the thickening clouds above, held no trace of her 17 years. Only something ancient and unfathomable that made even the boldest among them avert their eyes. On the shore, her mother Ndidi called out, her voice tinged with the usual mix of fear and affection. Nnenna never understood why her mother's eyes always reflected terror, or why her embraces felt like attempts to hold on to something slipping away. As Nnenna made her way toward the beach, her footprints filled with seawater too quickly. A hum escaped her, a melody without language that rose from within her whenever the full moon drew near. But tonight wasn't a full moon. Still, the sound emerged, unbidden, like something struggling to be born. That hum brought all work to a halt. Fishermen stilled their hands, women mending nets paused, children chasing crabs stopped mid-sprint. The village of Igu stood frozen, as the song painted vivid images in their minds. Towering waves, cities carved of coral beneath the sea, and inhuman faces watching from the depths. Only one villager moved, Obinna, the young salt harvester. His hands bore the calluses of hard labor, but his gaze still held softness. To him, her song was not a threat. It was beauty. "Nnenna," he signed, having learned to communicate with her through gestures. "Your hum, it's changed today." She shook her head urgently, pressing her lips closed, as though she could hold the sound inside. But the melody only grew stronger. The world began to respond, but as salt pans churned without wind. Fish burst from the water in perfect arcs. Palm seeds, barely touching the wet sand, sprouted into saplings in moments. Fear spread through the crowd. "Witchcraft," someone whispered. "A curse from the sea," another muttered. Pushing her way through the onlookers, Ndidi wrapped a worn cloth around Nnenna's shoulders, the same one she had clung to 18 years ago, when she was found half drowned on the shore with a silent infant. "Home," she signed, urgency in her hands. But before they could retreat, something rose from the deep, a figure walking atop the waves. To all but Nnenna, it was a distant shape. But Nnenna saw her clearly, a being whose form shifted between flesh and scales, whose gaze mirrored the abyssal ocean. The figure smiled, and Nnenna's voice died completely in her throat. That night, Nnenna tossed restlessly in sleep, while Ndidi lit 7 white candles and whispered prayers to long-forgotten gods. She clutched a cowrie shell pendant hidden beneath her dress, one that burned warm when danger was near. It had been hot for weeks. Through her window, she watched the full moon rise, silvering the sea. On the shore, she saw Obinna keeping his watch, quietly vowing to protect Nnenna in the way that only young love dares. The pendant flared, scorching her skin. Nnenna began to hum again in her sleep. This time, words came, spoken in a tongue that hadn't been heard in Egu for 3 generations. "The tide comes to claim its daughter. The tide comes to claim what's owed." Ndidi's fingers trembled as she blew out the candles. Nnenna's 18th birthday was only hours away. Tomorrow, she would reveal everything, the truth about her lineage. Tomorrow, their lives would change. Far below the waves, in the ocean's secret places, Ijeoma, Ndidi's estranged sister and a banished sea spirit, felt the awakening. Her niece's power stirred at last. She had waited 18 years, sharpening her vengeance to a fine edge. "Tomorrow," Ijeoma whispered to coral, to sharks, to sea anemones, I will take back what was stolen. Back in Igu, the villagers bolted their homes against the strange melody that now drifted from the sea itself. But Obinna stayed on the beach, silent and unmoving. His hands formed signs in prayer to a girl who could not see them, offering promises to the silence. The tide reached higher than anyone could recall. It crept up the sand, brushing Obinna's feet, cold, insistent. If one could read the movement of the waves, they might have found a message. It begins. It begins. It begins. A curse that began with a voice stolen would soon demand its due. But before the sea could collect its debt, Nnenna would need to uncover what had been taken from her, and the power she now held to take it back. Tomorrow would bring answers. Tomorrow would bring choices. Tomorrow would bring the tide. And the tide, as every child of Egu knew, never left without its due. The morning of Nnenna's 18th birthday arrived wrapped in mist so thick it seemed the sea had decided to walk on land. The fog carried voices, whispers of old tales and warnings that made mothers keep their children close and fishermen sharpen their charms against water spirits. Ndidi hadn't slept. She'd spent the night arranging and rearranging the items she'd kept hidden for 18 years. A necklace of deep-sea pearls that glowed faintly in darkness, a conch shell that sang without breath, and a piece of coral that still grew despite being removed from water. Each artifact pulsed with power that made her hands shake. She found Nnenna at dawn, sitting on the beach where Obinna had kept watch all night. His salt-stained clothes were damp from the mist, but his eyes remained alert, tracking every movement of the unusually calm sea. Nnenna, Ndidi signed, her weathered hands trembling. We must talk. The young woman looked up with eyes that today were the color of deep aquamarine. Another sign that her birthday approached. Obinna understood something momentous was happening, and with a gentle touch to Nnenna's hand, signaled he would give them privacy. As he walked away, his footprints in the wet sand slowly filled with clear water that reflected not the gray sky above, but the deep blue of ocean trenches. Neither woman noticed this peculiar occurrence. Both were too focused on the conversation that would reshape Nnenna's world. In their house, Ndidi spread the hidden artifacts before her daughter. Each item seemed to react to Nnenna's presence. The pearls brightened, the shell's song grew louder, the coral branch extended thin tendrils toward her. Your father. Ndidi began to sign, then stopped. How could she explain that Nnenna's father had been not a man, but the essence of the sea itself? That Ndidi herself wasn't fully human, but a guardian of the waters who had chosen to live among mortals? She started again with truth. 18 years ago, I fled my kingdom, fled my sister. I was pregnant with you, a child born of sea and storm. But Ijeoma, my sister, had gone mad with jealousy and grief. Nnenna's eyes widened as understanding began to dawn. She believed I had stolen something from her, a love, a destiny, the power of the depths themselves. Ndidi's signs grew frantic. She cursed you as punishment for my choices. Your voice, she took it to ensure you could never call upon the ancient songs, never claim your true heritage. The revelation hit Nnenna like a physical wave. Years of silence, of being different, of feeling something vast and powerful moving beneath her skin, suddenly made horrible sense. She reached for the conch shell, and at her touch it sang, a song she had heard in her dreams since childhood. Outside, the mist began to swirl in patterns that resembled faces, reaching hands, drowning figures. Ndidi continued, today, on your 18th birthday, your powers will fully manifest. The curse will weaken. You'll be vulnerable, but also stronger than you've ever been. Ijeoma will come for you. As if summoned by the words, a crack split the air. The clear morning light suddenly dimmed, and through the window they saw the fog part to reveal a dark storm approaching from the sea. It moved wrong. Against the wind, gathering speed too quickly, its center a vortex of purple clouds and green lightning. The villagers, Nnenna signed urgently, thinking of their kindness despite their fear, thinking especially of Obinna, who had never treated her as a creature to be avoided. They'll flee to higher ground, Ndidi assured her. The elders will know this storm bears the mark of old magic. But you and I, we must stand and face it. Face her. Nnenna stood, and for the first time, she didn't feel the weight of her silence as a burden, but as power held in reserve. The humming in her chest became stronger, more insistent. Without conscious thought, she picked up the necklace of deep-sea pearls and fastened it around her neck. The effect was immediate. Her skin began to shimmer, taking on an iridescent quality. Her hair, usually black as sea pebbles, now held strands of blue and green. Most striking of all, when she opened her mouth to hum, tiny wisps of sea foam escaped with the melody. Ndidi gasped. The transformation has begun. But listen, my daughter. Once voice meets voice, once Ijeoma sees what you've become, the battle will be between equals. You must choose. Revenge or redemption. Power gained through hate or power tempered by love. A massive wave crashed against the shore, sending water spraying 20 feet high. In its curtain of droplets, a figure began to form, Ijeoma emerging from her realm to claim her reckoning. Nnenna turned to face the sea, but first she looked toward the salt pans where Obinna had been. He was there, silhouetted against the approaching storm, signing from a distance. Whatever you are, whatever you face, I stand with you. Ndidi saw her daughter's shoulders strengthen. Love, even unspoken love, could be a powerful magic. Go, Ndidi urged. Face your aunt, face your destiny. But remember, you carry two heritages now. The power of the depths and the heart of a human who has known kindness despite being marked as different. As Nnenna walked toward the shore, each step left indentations that filled with seawater warm as tears. The humming in her chest grew to a song, still without words, but carrying meaning that transcended language. It spoke of loneliness and belonging, of silence and expression, of the pain of being divided between two worlds. The villagers who had been seeking shelter paused in their panic. Some fell to their knees at the sound of Nnenna's song, tears inexplicably flowing down their cheeks. They began to remember, stories passed down through generations about a time when Igu was blessed by the sea people, when gods and humans walked the same shores. The storm reached the beach just as Nnenna stepped into the waves. Ijeoma materialized fully, a being of terrible beauty with flowing hair that turned to tentacles, skin that shifted between scales and flesh, and eyes that held the predatory depth of ocean trenches. At last, Ijeoma's voice rolled like thunder across the water. The child who stole my destiny returns to face judgment. Nnenna raised her head, and for the first time in 18 years, she felt words forming in her throat. The curse, weakened by her coming of age and her acceptance of both her heritages, began to crack. But just as her lips parted to speak her first words, Obinna appeared beside her, having run across the beach when he saw her enter the waves. He grabbed her hand, his eyes full of fierce determination and love. The curse wouldn't break completely, not yet. But in that moment of connection, Nnenna knew she didn't face her destiny alone, and that knowledge would make all the difference in the battle to come. Above them, the sky cracked with green lightning. The real revelation hadn't been the truth of her heritage. The real revelation was understanding that identity wasn't just about what you were born as, but what you chose to become. And Nnenna was choosing to be more than just a victim of her aunt's curse, more than just a child of two worlds. She was choosing to be a bridge, if her voice could be found. The waves rose higher, responding to both Ijeoma's rage and Nnenna's awakening power. In the distance, villagers clutched each other, whispering prayers and remembering old promises between their ancestors and the sea. The battle for Nnenna's voice and her soul had begun. The oracle of the deep mangrove resided at the place where river kissed sea, nestled within a maze of roots, so ancient they twisted into shapes that whispered stories with each passing tide. No one from Igu had dared to travel through the waters ruled by Ijeoma in living memory. It was a journey of myth and risk. Nnenna and Obinna had narrowly survived Ijeoma's initial attack. When the sea spirit hurled herself at Nnenna, summoning waves fierce enough to shatter ships, Obinna had done something no one expected. He sang. His voice, shaped by years of labor and song on the salt flats, carried ancestral words his grandmother once taught him. Words rooted in power and memory, words that made Ijeoma falter. They fled during her moment of stunned silence, but they both knew it wouldn't last. The storm chased them inland, and Nnenna's humming began to throb with unspent power, growing painful in its intensity. Now they trudged through sodden marshland. Ndidi, reluctantly moved by Obinna's determination to protect Nnenna, had finally shared the path. 3 nights of storms follow us, Obinna signed during a short rest. The village now blames you. They fear the name Sea Witch will cling forever. Nnenna's touch on his cheek left salt water behind. She signed softly, "You should go. I only bring danger." But Obinna shook his head, unwavering. When the heart leads, love chooses danger over safety. The air between them grew charged. For the first time, love had been spoken, even if silently. Tears brimmed in Nnenna's ever-shifting sea-green eyes, glittering like bioluminescent waves. As twilight fell, they arrived at the mangrove labyrinth. Roots curled above and around them, forming winding tunnels that bent reality. Somewhere deep inside, the oracle waited, the ancient bridge between the land and sea realms, keeper of forgotten truths. Their first guardian wasn't human. A massive mangrove snake, black as obsidian and coiled across their path, studied them. But when it spoke, the voice was that of a young girl. Those touched by both realms may enter, but those of only land must prove their worth. The snake's glistening eyes fixed on Obinna. Why does a salt harvester seek the Oracle of Waters? Obinna stood tall. To help restore what was taken. A voice, a legacy. I offer my own voice in exchange, if that is the price. The snake tilted its head, thoughtful. Around them, the mangrove roots began to hum, Nnenna's melody echoing in the living wood. The serpent heard the song of the sea-kin. "Enter," it whispered. "But the cost may surprise you." For hours they walked strange paths, upward-flowing streams, light bending in impossible ways. Nnenna's hand anchored Obinna as they moved through a world slipping between dimensions. Finally, they reached a circular glade where a colossal mangrove tree stood, its roots rising like a throne. Upon it sat the oracle, not an elder, but a child with pearl-like skin and seaweed hair. Her gaze held the wisdom of lifetimes. "Daughter of the tide," the oracle said, her voice echoing from all directions. "You seek your voice, but do you know what that voice was meant to do?" Nnenna signed quickly, shaking her head. "Only that it was taken to punish my mother." "Your voice is the song of binding, meant to heal or destroy, to connect water and earth. Your aunt feared this. She silenced you not only to punish, but to prevent the union your birth signified." Then the oracle turned to Obinna. "You, child of salt and sand, would you give your voice for hers?" Obinna nodded. "Without question. There is another path, a harder one." The oracle lifted her hand, and images shimmered in the air. Young Ndidi, radiant spirit, Ijeoma, not yet broken, sisters once, dreaming of uniting their worlds. Then came love. Ndidi's union with the sea father, her child's destiny too grand to ignore. Ijeoma's heart twisted, not only in jealousy but in fear of being left behind. Your aunt is still lost to grief. If you claim your voice by taking Obinna's, the power will carry bitterness. But if you can reach her heart, mend the bond between the sisters, your voice will return whole. The oracle's face grew solemn. To end the curse, you must go to Ulindu, the undersea realm. Show Ijeoma love, unbound by control, power shared, not hoarded. Nnenna hesitated. "But we cannot breathe underwater." "You carry deep-sea blood," the oracle said with a smile, teeth glinting like pearls. "You always could. Mortals, however," she turned to Obinna, plucking a hair that turned to a string of pearls. "These will grant breath, but only for one tide's turn. Fail to return before the tide shifts, and you drown. As they accepted the pearls, the oracle warned, Ijeoma will try to sever your bond. She will show you lies, pain, memories turn cruel. Your unity must outlast her isolation. They thanked the oracle and stepped into their fate. Outside, the storm had worsened. Lightning painted the sky in green and violet, and the wind screamed with Ijeoma's fury. Come, niece, come and see what your life cost me. At the shoreline, they paused. The idea of submerging, even with the oracle's gift, defied instinct. Nnenna's hand trembled. Obinna signed, I trust you more than I fear death. Hand in hand, they dove into the sea. The pearls glowed, and the water swallowed them whole. But instead of drowning, they transformed. Breathing came as easily as on land. Their clothes morphed into robes of seaweed and shells. Nnenna's humming expanded, deepened. Down here, she could almost speak. Ulindu stretched out below, a city of coral and cavern, of anemone gardens and impossible structures. Schools of fish moved in choreographed symbols, spelling stories from before the rift between land and sea. Yet beauty was marred by darkness. Ijeoma's sorrow had corrupted the realm. Black tendrils drifted through the water, spreading grief like ink. As they journeyed toward Ijeoma's palace, the ocean challenged them. Time twisted. The weight of the deep tested their lungs and minds. Visions haunted them. Nnenna saw her mother abandoning duty. Obinna saw himself chaining Nnenna to a human fate, unworthy of her legacy. But through it all, their hands remained joined. They remembered the oracle's warning and chose connection, again and again. At last, they reached the coral palace, glowing from within. Its guardian was a mirror of water, reflecting not their faces but their truths. Nnenna saw the healer she could become. Obinna saw his capacity for love without condition. The mirror dissolved into a doorway. Inside waited Ijeoma, seated on a throne where all sea currents met. She looked diminished, worn by isolation and regret. You come for what I took, she said, voice as heavy as the deep. Do you know what you asked to reclaim? Nnenna stepped forward. For the first time in 18 years, she spoke, not with words, but with flowing currents that conveyed meaning directly. I come to mend what was broken, between sisters, between worlds, between us. Ijeoma's eyes widened. This was no confrontation, no vengeance. This was something deeper, and so began a different kind of battle, the one for forgiveness, for healing, for redemption. Throne room was a paradox, at once as vast as an ocean basin and as intimate as a tidal pool. Here, memories took physical form, joyful moments shared between sisters when water and magic were young. The day Ndidi chose to bear the Sea Father's child, her radiance dimming Ijeoma's brilliance, the jealousy that curdled into the curse which stole a child's voice. Nnenna moved through these memories as if swimming through dreams. Each touched her differently now that they belonged to her own history. She no longer saw her mother as simply the woman who raised her, but as a younger spirit torn between love and duty, choosing a path that would create Nnenna while shattering Ijeoma's faith in family. Look at what she built, Ijeoma said, gesturing to the swirling memories around them. She who promised we would unite the realms, who swore our power would flow as one river into the endless sea. Instead, she chose to dilute our lineage with mortal blood. Nnenna signed her response, her gestures forming currents of meaning that Ijeoma could understand. She chose to create something new, not to destroy what was. New? Ijeoma laughed, a sound like shells grinding against stone. You are an abomination that should never have existed. Half-blood, quarter-human, polluted by land and weakness. But Obinna, who had remained silent, stepped forward. His voice, amplified by the strange acoustics of the water realm, carried a power he hadn't known he possessed. She is the strongest person I know because she carries multiple worlds within her, not torn apart by them, but made whole. Ijeoma turned her attention to the human boy who dared to speak in her domain. With a gesture, she summoned tentacles of water that wrapped around him, dragging him toward her throne. A salt harvester who thinks to lecture the depths on strength? You know nothing of our power, nothing of our sacrifice. As Obinna struggled in the supernatural grip, Nnenna felt her powerlessness transform. The humming in her chest expanded, pressing against the curse that bound her voice. For the first time, she didn't just want to speak, she needed to. The memories began to shift, drawn toward Nnenna like iron to a lodestone. She saw now that they were one-sided, reflections of Ijioma's grief and isolation. Nnenna reached into the current of history and pulled forth different truths. Ijeoma as a young spirit, laughing as she taught sea creatures to dance. Ijeoma nursing wounded sailors, her compassion shining. Ijeoma and Ndidi united in purpose, to be guardians helping humans understand the rhythms of the sea while safeguarding its mysteries. You weren't always anger and vengeance, Nnenna signed. The curse resisted, making every movement painful, but she continued. You were a healer, a teacher, a bridge. That Ijeoma died when your mother betrayed our purpose. But even as she spoke, Ijeoma's grip on Obinna eased. The memories Nnenna had summoned now floated between them. Gentle moments, acts of care, a heart once tender, now hardened by time and pain. Obinna gasped as the water loosened around him, allowing him to breathe. He coughed, then spoke. My grandmother told stories of sea spirits who helped salt harvesters, who warned of storms and guided ships home. Was that you? The question hit Ijeoma like a blow. What stories? Of the blue lady who saved the village from the great storm, who taught us which waters to avoid in winter? Who? Obinna paused, realization dawning. Who mourned alone when we stopped leaving offerings? A tremor passed through the palace. Memories fractured, not the joyful ones, but those soaked in abandonment. Nnenna suddenly understood. Ijeoma's grief wasn't just about Ndidi's betrayal. It was also about losing her secret connection to the human world she had once protected. You missed them, Nnenna signed. You missed us. I needed no one, Ijeoma snarled, but her form flickered, shifting between wrath and woundedness. Sensing the crack in her aunt's armor, Nnenna pushed harder against the curse. The humming in her chest turned into sound, not speech yet, but notes heavy with emotion. Sorrow for Ijeoma's loneliness, love for the aunt she never knew, a resolve to heal, not punish. The song affected the realm itself. Currents cleared, becoming crystalline. Sea creatures long driven away by Ijeoma's fury began to return. Most powerfully, the melody unearthed a buried memory, Ijeoma's deepest, one even she had tried to forget. A vision appeared, a younger Ijeoma holding a newborn Nnenna. In that hidden memory, stolen by the curse, Ijeoma had not been angry, she had been awestruck. The bridge between worlds? Her past self whispered. The one who will finally unite what we have kept apart. Present-day Ijeoma recoiled as if burned. No, I didn't. You did hope, Obinna said softly, before fear twisted your heart. The emotional tide was shifting. Nnenna could feel it in the realm, in the magical waters of Ulindu. But time was running out. The oracle's pearls against her skin were warming. The tide above was changing. Soon it would pull them back. She sang louder, weaving sorrow and joy, betrayal and hope into the throne room. She showed Ijeoma what the village had become without her. Fishermen who forgot sea songs, children who no longer learned the old ways, a people severed from the sacred depths. But also, Nnenna signed, hands trembling, what they could become again, what you could become, not a guardian of solitude, but the bridge you were meant to be. The pearls pulsed urgently. Far above, the tide began its final pull. Ijeoma sensed it too. Her form stabilized, caught between the vengeful spirit and the loving guide she once was. If I release the curse, she said slowly, I admit I was wrong. I admit the jealousy poisoned me. Admitting wrong is how healing begins, Obinna said, his voice steady now. Nnenna stepped closer, signing her final plea. I don't want your voice as a replacement or a sacrifice. I want our voices, yours, mine, my mother's, to sing together, as you once did. The water surged. Their time below was almost over. If the curse stayed, if Nnenna couldn't speak, she might not survive the violent ascent. Ijeoma lifted her hand, power ancient and terrible gathering there, the same magic that had silenced Nnenna for 18 years. She hesitated, caught between past and future. Then, with a single motion, she released it. A wave of energy swept the room. Nnenna felt the lock on her voice shatter. Not just speech, but songs passed through generations were now hers. Her voice rang out, not a whisper, but a strong, clear note that echoed with ocean rhythms and human heartbeats. But there was no time to rejoice. The tide claimed them with tornado strength. As they were pulled upward, Nnenna reached toward her aunt, her new voice calling out, "Come with us. Don't stay alone anymore." The last thing they saw before leaving Ulindu was Ajeoma's face, not hardened, not enraged, but thoughtful. For the first time in centuries, she looked open to change. Then water gave way to air. They broke the surface, gasping and coughing, as the stormy sea embraced their return to the world above. Barely visible, its people sheltered in sacred caves, all but one, Ndidi, waiting at the shore. For the first time in 18 years, Nnenna opened her mouth. What came forth was not just a voice, but the song of binding and ancestral power. Her words soared across the storm. "Mother, I have found my voice." Instantly, the sea responded. Waves eased, lightning dimmed, wind softened. From the depths rose Ijeoma, not as the dark force they'd once faced, but transformed. Power still radiated from her, but the bitterness had lifted. "Sister," Ndidi called, stepping into the waves. "You returned." "The child asked me to," Ijeoma answered, her voice deep as the sea. "And I am tired of being alone." As the three women drew together, Nnenna sang to Obinna, not in words, but in feeling, love, gratitude, and the promise of shared songs. The villagers emerged and saw what would become legend. Three women of sea heritage in the shallows, voices harmonizing. Nnenna's voice held mountain strength and tide pool gentleness. Ndidi's carried wisdom. Ajeoma's sorrow and rebirth. Together they sang ancient blessings. The sea responded, leaping fish, gentle waves, and gifts from the shore. Salt pans brimmed with pure water, untouched nets overflowed with fish. When the sun broke through, Nnenna spoke, "We are bridges between sea and land, past and present, isolation and connection." Egu, long marked by both water's blessings and curses, saw healing. Fear gave way to understanding. Old stories of curses became tales of redemption. In the days that followed, Ijeoma became a guardian again. She taught fishermen forgotten lore, helped salt harvesters read the tides, and warned of storms with time to prepare. Nnenna, too, discovered her voice held many gifts: healing, calming, rain calling. But the dearest was the simple power to speak with her mother, laugh with children, whisper to Obinna under the stars. Obinna's love deepened, not because she had a voice, but because he had always known her strength. When she offered magic, he declined. "I need nothing but the chance to love you," he said. "Though, maybe teach me a water song or two?" The village changed. Children once fearful now sat at her feet. Fishermen sought her guidance. Women asked for songs that could protect their kin. Ndidi, freed from secrecy, grew lighter in spirit. She and Ijeoma rebuilt their bond and founded a school of water wisdom, passing on ancient knowledge. At the festival of the turning tide, Nnenna spoke, "For 18 years I was silent, but silence taught me to listen. My voice was not stolen to weaken me, it was waiting until I was ready." She looked to her mother and aunt. Ijeoma's curse was born from heartbreak, but broken things, when healed, can be stronger. Our family is whole, our village reunited with the sea. That night, Obinna took her to the shore, their old place. "The oracle said I'd sacrifice my voice for yours," he said, tracing the sand. "But you found a way that needed no sacrifice, just understanding." "We sacrifice daily," she replied. "Pride for humility, fear for love, the need to be understood for the choice to understand." "Wise words, daughter of sea and song," he teased. "I prefer what you call me, and that is Nnenna, just Nnenna, The girl who sings off-key forgets she can speak and watches the sunrise with you. He laughed. That Nnenna is my favorite. Nearby, Ijeoma watched. Her guardianship was gentler now, but no less strong. She had learned that love must flow like water, free, not controlled. The curse that stole a voice had brought patience, wisdom, healing, and taught that some silences prepare us for the right moment to speak. Years later, children would hear the story of the time of the stolen voice. They'd learn that magic isn't always loud. Sometimes it's in persistence, in connection, in waiting. And as Nnenna would say, nestled in the curves of her story, sometimes our greatest trials hide our greatest gifts. The Song of Binding had done more than unite land and sea. It mended hearts, healed families, and brought divided people together. Nnenna's voice spoke a universal truth. Healing takes courage, love needs understanding, and redemption is always within reach. As stars turned overhead and the sea whispered on, Egu slept peacefully, guarded by those who had learned the greatest power lies not in control, but in love, healing, and grace. Even the waters remembered that the strongest curses can be transformed and the quietest voices can carry the deepest truths.